My name is Laura Marris. I'm an instructor in creative writing here at UB. I'm also a poet and a translator. So as it happens right now, I am doing a new translation of Albert Camus' The Plague for a Knopf. And I started this project back in September, not having any idea that these would be the circumstances I would be working on this project under. So I thought what we could do today is we could look at some translations of the sky in this novel, because the sky in The Plague is really a major character. And the sky is something that Camus describes people being, quarantined in this city, a little bit like, we're quarantined here in Buffalo, staying at home now. And people have kind of the walls of the city, and then they have the sky as sort of the boundaries of their experience of the plague. So the sky is really a very important character, a very important outlet. It's where a lot of emotion goes in the novel, and where a lot of the really beautiful descriptions come from. So I thought what I could do today is I'll just read you a few passages of sky translations of Camus' own. And it's a little known fact about Camus, and one of my favorite little known facts about him, that he actually worked briefly as a meteorologist. So he had a very particular affinity for describing the sky. So I'm going to read you a few of his sky descriptions from The Plague and talk a little bit about translating them. And then we're actually going to go outside, and I enlisted the help of a few folks to do some sky translations of our own Buffalo skies and kind of collectively practice looking up at the sky together. So we will move on and look at those after this. The first passage that I'm going to read to you is from the earlier part of the novel, when they're just starting to figure out that something really dangerous is happening. And the weather is also getting warmer. So that's something that they're worried about, because they're worried that the heat will prevent the plague from kind of slipping away from the city. So here's kind of the first time that we see the sky as a major character. At the time, the weather seemed to settle. The sun bailed out the puddles left by the last rains. The nice blue sky is giving off a yellow light. The hums of the airplanes in growing heat. The whole season encouraged serenity. And I don't know if anyone else notices this when they read this, but I've noticed in recent weeks that you don't hear as many planes going overhead. It's kind of a strange and remarkable fact of this time. So kind of Camus really, I think, understood that. And here you can also see the weather in that sentence is, it's much more serene. It's kind of working counter to everything that's happening with the characters. So the weather is sort of like a way to build suspense as well. And here I'll read you another one. So throughout the novel, there's this idea that there's a scourge, that the plague is like a scourge coming down from the sky. And Camus will play with that metaphor a little bit. So he writes, "For strangely what climbed at those moments toward the still sunny terraces in the absence of noises from vehicles and machines that usually make up the language of cities, it was only an enormous rumor of footsteps and muted voices, the sorrowful slipping of thousands of souls to the rhythm of the scourge whistling in the encumbered sky, an endless tramping that finally suffocates, filling the whole city little by little, and which, night after night, gives its most faithful and bleakest voice to the blind stubbornness that had come to replace love in our hearts." So that whole thing is one sentence, and that's one of those sentences where Camus kind of really stretching out the sentence structure to make you feel the length of the quarantine and make you feel kind of how long people are having to wait to be reunited with their loved ones and to be kind of able to have a normal life in their city. It's kind of a quiet but it's a quiet that's full of tension, which probably we can recognize these days as well. I'll read you just a couple more. This is another one which is kind of has Panalu's scourge in it. Panalu is actually the preacher of this town, who the doctor has a conflicted relationship with, we'll just say. Mist, heat, and rain followed one another through the sky. Silent flocks of starlings and thrushes coming from the south passed very high, avoiding the city, as if Panalu's scourge, that strange piece of wood that turned, whistling over the tops of houses, held the birds at bay. That's a very threatening description of the sky. And then the last one I'll read to you is a moment when the doctor is just absolutely exhausted. He's just come out of watching a really difficult case that was under his care. And he goes and he sits on a bench in the courtyard of this makeshift hospital, and he looks at the sky. So this is how Kim describes it. A pillowy whiteness was slipping over the blue sky of morning, making the air even more suffocating. Rhea, on his bench, let himself go. He looked at the branches, the sky, slowly finding his breath, bit by bit, reining in his tiredness. So I like that one. The sky is a pillow there, and the pillow of the sky kind of restores some of the energy in the doctor. So now we'll go and look at some of our own Buffalo Sky translations.